The starship Aurora Dawn moved through the endless dark with a steady hum. Its silver body reflected the light of distant suns as it carried a team of diplomats, scientists, and guards toward the royal world of the Seraphis Empire. Among the group was a human soldier, Captain Ryan Hale. He stood near one of the wide observation windows, watching stars stretch into lines as the ship slipped through faster than light travel. Ryan was not the type who liked attention. His uniform was clean but plain, without extra decorations. He carried no weapon at this moment, for the mission was one of peace. The other envoys spoke in low voices, discussing strategies and gifts for the alien queen. Ryan listened but said little. He was not chosen for his words. He was there as a guard, an observer, someone meant to represent human presence. Humanity had only recently stepped into the larger galactic stage. Other civilizations had explored the stars for centuries, some for millennia. By comparison, Earth seemed like a child among giants. Most aliens considered humans fragile, too new to be taken seriously. They were tolerated, yes, but rarely respected. When the Aurora Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the crew saw the royal world appear before them. It was a breathtaking sight. A massive planet covered in shining seas and towering crystal spires that rose from the surface like needles reaching for the sky. Energy fields wrapped around the spires, glowing softly, creating patterns that could be seen from orbit. It looked less like a city and more like a piece of art placed carefully upon a world. The Seraphis Empire was one of the oldest powers in the galaxy. Their queen, Seraphis herself, was said to have ruled for centuries thanks to advanced medical science. She was respected and feared. Every race sought her favor, for an alliance with her empire meant safety, wealth, and influence. As the ship docked, the envoys lined up. Ryan stood at the edge of the group, tall but silent. His sharp eyes studied the alien structures as they stepped onto the landing platform. Tall, elegant beings awaited them. The Seraphians had pale silver skin, long flowing hair that shimmered like liquid metal, and eyes that glowed faintly blue. They wore robes decorated with intricate symbols that seemed to change when viewed from different angles. The human envoys bowed politely. The Seraphians inclined their heads but paid little attention to Ryan. To them, he looked like any other soldier, unimportant compared to the ambassadors and scientists. Ryan did not mind. He had grown used to being overlooked. The group was escorted through shining halls of crystal and light. Strange plants grew along the walls, glowing softly, filling the air with a calm scent. Music that sounded like soft wind chimes echoed in the distance. Every corner of the palace seemed designed to remind visitors that the Seraphis Empire was ancient, powerful, and elegant. At last, they entered the grand throne chamber. The ceiling stretched high, decorated with flowing streams of energy. The throne itself was carved from a single piece of crystal, tall and shimmering, glowing with inner light. Upon it sat the queen. Queen Seraphis was unlike the others. Her silver skin was brighter, her hair longer, her eyes sharper. She carried herself with calm grace, yet her presence filled the chamber. When she spoke, her voice echoed like music. "Welcome, travelers of Earth," she said, her words translated instantly by small devices carried by the envoys. "You stand before the Seraphis throne. Speak and let us hear the will of your people." The lead ambassador stepped forward. His name was Dr. Marcus Ellen, a skilled diplomat known for his smooth words. He spoke of peace, of trade, of cultural exchange. He offered gifts from Earth, rare stones, books of human art, recordings of music and literature. The queen listened politely, nodding at times, though her expression remained calm and unreadable. Ryan stood in the background, watching. He noticed how the queen's eyes moved not only to the ambassador but to every envoy present, measuring them in silence. For a brief moment, her gaze landed on him. Ryan did not move, but he met her eyes steadily. There was no challenge in his look, only quiet focus. The queen tilted her head slightly, as if surprised, before turning her attention back to the ambassador. When the speech ended, other alien envoys stepped forward. They were not from Earth, but from neighboring allies. Each one spoke proudly of their people's strength and achievements. Some boasted of their fleets, others of their technologies. They carried gifts glowing with strange energies, weapons that could pierce planets and jewels from dying stars. Compared to them, the humans' offerings seemed small. More than one alien envoy chuckled quietly at the simplicity of Earth's gifts. Yet Ryan noticed the queen's eyes again. She seemed less interested in the glowing weapons and more curious about the simple human books and music recordings placed before her. When the ceremony paused, the queen rose from her throne. She moved with slow grace, stepping down to walk among the envoys. Her attendants followed, but she raised her hand and stopped them. Alone, she circled the group, studying each visitor with calm intensity. When she reached Ryan, she stopped. "You are not a speaker," she said softly. Ryan bowed slightly. "No, Your Majesty. I am only a soldier." Her eyes narrowed just a little. "Only a soldier. Yet you meet my gaze without fear. Why?" Ryan thought for a moment before answering. "I was trained to stand steady no matter who I face. Whether human or alien, queen or commoner, my duty is the same." The queen was silent. Then unexpectedly she smiled faintly. It was not a smile of amusement, but one of curiosity. "Interesting," she murmured. She moved on, leaving Ryan in quiet thought. He could feel the eyes of other envoys on him. Some looked annoyed, others surprised. After all, why would the queen pause to speak with a mere soldier? The ceremony continued, but Ryan knew something had shifted. That evening, the human envoys were given quarters within the palace. The halls outside their rooms glowed with soft light, and meals of unfamiliar but carefully prepared food were served. While the ambassadors discussed strategies for the next day, Ryan sat near a window looking out at the alien city below. Spires of crystal glowed in colors that changed with the setting sun. Flying ships moved gracefully through the sky, leaving trails of light behind them. Ryan felt both small and inspired.
Humanity had come so far, yet compared to this empire, they were still young.
But perhaps being young also meant something else. Room to grow, to surprise, to adapt. He remembered the queen's faint smile. For reasons he did not yet understand, she had noticed him. And in that moment, Ryan knew this mission was about more than words and gifts. Something larger was waiting, and he would be part of it. The night on the alien world passed quietly, but the seeds of change had already been planted. The morning sun on the royal world rose in shimmering colors, painting the sky with silver and violet light. From his quarters, Captain Ryan Hale watched the city below come alive. Flying ships glided between towers. Lights flowed through crystal bridges, and the people of the Seraphis Empire moved with their calm, graceful order. Everything seemed carefully designed, as if the entire world was a performance for the eyes. Ryan turned away from the window as a soft sound announced the arrival of a messenger. The doors opened and a Seraphian attendant entered. She bowed lightly and spoke with a voice as calm as water. "The queen requests the presence of all envoys." "In the grand hall," she said. The human ambassadors quickly gathered their belongings. Dr. Marcus Ellen looked nervous but tried to hide it behind a polite smile. The scientists whispered among themselves, guessing at what this new meeting might hold. Ryan adjusted his uniform and followed quietly at the back. The grand hall was a vast chamber, its floor made of transparent crystal that seemed to float above rivers of glowing energy below. Columns stretched high into the ceiling, glowing with shifting colors. The envoys from many worlds were already there, gathered in groups. Some stood proudly in ornate uniforms, others with strange devices strapped to their bodies, each prepared to show the strength of their people. The queen entered last. She walked slowly, her presence filling the room. Silence fell as she raised her hand. "Envoys of the stars," Queen Seraphis said, her voice carrying like music. "You have come seeking friendship, alliance, and recognition. Words are fine, but words alone do not reveal the true nature of a people. Today, you will be tested, not with war, but with trials of the body, the mind, and the spirit. Those who succeed will earn honor. Those who fail will earn lessons." Murmurs filled the hall. Some envoys smiled with confidence. Others exchanged worried looks. The queen continued, "These trials are not for leaders alone. They are for all who stand here. For every envoy represents their people. Let us see not only what you carry in gifts, but what you carry within yourselves." With that, the floor of the hall shifted. The crystal under their feet moved like liquid, forming paths that led into different chambers. The envoys were guided into groups. Ryan found himself walking with the humans, though he noticed the queen's eyes flicker toward him again before she turned away. The first chamber was filled with strange devices. Floating cubes rearranged themselves constantly, locking together in shifting patterns. The Seraphian guide explained that this was a puzzle of harmony. To solve it, one must find the right sequence that aligned all cubes into balance. The alien envoys stepped forward eagerly, A tall warrior from the Dravak species used his forearms to move the cubes with speed, but the puzzle resisted, shifting against him until he grew frustrated. A scientist from the Tyrell used advanced scanners, trying to map the sequence with computers, but the cubes ignored the signals. Others tried force, pulling or twisting the shapes, but the puzzle only reset itself. Finally, Dr. Ellen stepped forward. He stared at the cubes, sweat forming on his brow. He hesitated, unsure. Ryan, who stood near him, leaned closer and spoke quietly. "Try rhythm," Ryan said. "Not force, not speed. Watch the way they move. It's like a pattern in music." Dr. Ellen blinked, then nodded. Slowly, he touched the cubes, not pushing hard but following the rhythm of their motion. To everyone's surprise, the cubes began to align, clicking into place one by one until the entire structure glowed with harmony. The humans had passed the first trial. The Seraphian guide inclined his head. "Clever," he said softly. The second chamber was different. Here, walls of crystal formed a shifting maze. The paths changed constantly, glowing barriers appearing and disappearing. Some envoys activated jetpacks. Others used teleportation devices. Many rushed ahead, but most found themselves trapped when the walls shifted. Ryan studied the maze quietly. He noticed a pattern. The barriers appeared in cycles, opening and closing like breathing. While others rushed forward impatiently, Ryan motioned for the humans to wait. "Move only when the rhythm allows," he said. "Don't fight the maze. Follow it." Together, the humans moved step by step, never rushing. The maze shifted, but the rhythm stayed true. Slowly, patiently, they reached the end. Other envoys who had rushed too fast were still trapped inside, frustrated and embarrassed. By now, whispers had begun. The humans, thought to be weak and inexperienced, had passed 2 trials through patience and observation. Queen Seraphis, watching from above, seemed pleased. The third chamber tested endurance. A wide platform extended into open air, with strong winds pressing against it. To cross, one had to walk along the path while the storm tried to push them off. Many alien envoys used shields or powered suits, but the storm grew stronger with every artificial aid. The more they resisted with machines, the harder the wind pressed against them. Ryan stepped forward without hesitation. He removed the light armor from his shoulders, leaving only his uniform. Then he began walking, leaning into the wind but never fighting it directly. Step by step, he adjusted his balance, letting the storm guide his movements. It was slow and tiring, but his steady pace carried him forward. Others watched in disbelief. Some envoys stumbled and fell back, unable to continue. But Ryan reached the far side of the platform, breathing hard but standing tall. The queen herself clapped softly, the sound echoing through the chamber like a bell. "Remarkable," she said. At last, the trials ended. The envoys returned to the grand hall, some proud, others humbled. The queen addressed them once more. "You have seen that strength is not always in power nor in machines, but in patience, observation, and the will to endure. Humanity has shown qualities that cannot be measured in weapons or treasures. These qualities surprise me." Her eyes rested briefly on Ryan. He bowed his head slightly, saying nothing. That evening, as the envoys rested, the human group gathered in their quarters. The ambassadors praised Ryan for his guidance, though he shrugged off their thanks. "I only noticed patterns," he said. "Anyone could have done it." But deep down, Ryan knew the queen had seen more than patterns. She had seen the human spirit, the ability to adapt, to think differently, and to survive even in places where others struggled. Outside, the alien city glowed beneath the night sky, unaware that something important had begun. The queen's curiosity about humanity had grown stronger, and Ryan, though he did not yet realize it, had become the center of her attention. The true test was only beginning. The palace of the Seraphis Empire shone brightly under the twin moons. Music drifted from the high halls and fountains of glowing water lit the courtyards. The envoys from many worlds walked proudly through the decorated chambers, speaking of trade and alliances. For most, it was a time of celebration. But for Captain Ryan Hale, something felt different. He sat quietly in the humans' quarters, his eyes on the patterns of light that ran across the ceiling. Ever since the trials of the day before, he had noticed the queen's gaze following him. She never said much to him directly, yet her eyes carried questions that words could not. Ryan did not know what it meant, but he sensed something was coming. The night passed without trouble. But the next morning, the calm of the palace was broken. A sudden sound echoed through the halls, deep and heavy, like thunder beneath the ground. The walls of the palace trembled, and the crystal lights flickered. Envoys rushed into the corridors, their voices full of confusion. Ryan stood quickly, his soldiers' instincts alert. "What was that?" one of the scientists whispered. Before anyone could answer, another sound came. It was louder, closer, and this time the floor shook hard enough to knock some envoys off balance. From deep below the palace, a low roar filled the air. The Seraphian guards appeared, their silver armor glowing as they hurried to surround the envoys. One of them spoke quickly, his voice tense though controlled. "Stay together. Something ancient has awakened." The word sent a wave of silence through the group. The envoys were led into the grand hall once more. The queen was already there, standing tall, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "Do not panic," she said firmly. "Long ago, guardians were placed beneath this citadel. They were meant to protect our empire in times of danger. But something has disturbed their rest, and they rise now without command. Until we bring them back to silence, none are safe." Her words had barely ended when the ground shook again. This time, part of the wall cracked open, and a blinding light poured into the hall. From the gap, a massive figure stepped forward. The guardian was shaped like a giant, its body carved from black stone and lined with glowing veins of energy. Its eyes blazed like blue fire, and every step it took shook the floor. Panic spread quickly among the envoys. Some activated their advanced weapons, firing beams of energy at the creature. But the guardian's stone body absorbed the blasts without slowing. It swung one huge arm, and the air itself seemed to ripple. Several envoys were thrown back, their weapons flying from their hands. Ryan held his ground, his eyes narrowing. He was not surprised that raw power failed. If the guardians were truly ancient, they were built to resist even the strongest weapons. The queen raised her hand, signaling her guards to fall back. She watched the guardian with narrowed eyes, then turned toward the envoys. "Do not waste your strength," she warned. "This is not a foe you can defeat by force," but her warning came too late for many. A warrior from the Dravak charged forward with a glowing spear, shouting proudly. He struck the guardian's leg, but the weapon shattered like glass. The guardian's eyes flared brighter, and with one step it sent a shockwave that threw the warrior across the chamber. The envoys froze, their confidence broken. Ryan studied the guardian's movements. He noticed something the others had missed. Every time the creature moved, the glowing lines on its body pulsed in a rhythm, like the beat of a drum. When it paused, the light dimmed for a moment before rising again. He spoke quickly to Dr. Ellen. "It's following a pattern. Watch the light, it tells when it will strike." The ambassador looked uncertain but nodded. "Then what do we do?" Ryan took a slow breath. "We don't fight it with power. We use timing." As the guardian raised its arm again, Ryan shouted to the envoys nearby. "Move now." He dashed forward, not to attack, but to draw the creature's attention. The guardian swung at him, but Ryan rolled aside at the exact moment the glowing lines dimmed. The strike missed, hitting the floor instead and cracking the crystal. The queen's eyes widened. Ryan shouted again. "Don't fight against it, move with the rhythm. Wait for the dim light, then act." Slowly, the others began to follow his lead. Instead of firing wildly, they moved carefully, dodging at the right moments. Even the queen's guards, trained in discipline, began to copy Ryan's timing. Together, they guided the guardian away from the envoys and toward the far end of the hall. It was still powerful, but no longer unstoppable. For the first time, the aliens realized they could avoid its strikes. Finally, the queen stepped forward. She raised her hand, and a glowing sphere of energy appeared above her palm. She waited, watching the guardian's rhythm, and when the lines dimmed, she released the sphere. It struck the creature's chest not with force, but with a sound. A soft, deep tone that echoed through the hall. The guardian froze. The light on its body flickered, then dimmed completely. Slowly, like a statue returning to its place, it sank back into the ground. The crack in the wall closed, and silence filled the hall once more. The envoys stood in shock. Many were pale, their pride shaken. They had brought powerful weapons but achieved nothing. Yet the human soldier with no weapon at all had noticed what none of them saw. The queen turned to Ryan. Her silver eyes were sharp, filled with thought. "You saw the pattern," she said. "When others saw only chaos, you saw order." Ryan nodded quietly. It wasn't about strength. It was about watching carefully. The queen studied him for a long moment, then looked at the other envoys. "Let this be a lesson," she said firmly. "The mightiest weapons can fail, but patience and perception can save us all. Humanity may be young, but today it has shown wisdom that many of you forgot." The hall fell silent. Some envoys lowered their heads, humbled. Others looked at Ryan with new respect, though a few with envy. Later, as the humans returned to their quarters, Dr. Ellen shook his head in disbelief. "You saved us," he said quietly. "Without you, the Guardian would have destroyed everything." Ryan gave a small smile. "I didn't save anyone. I only noticed what was already there." But deep down he knew it was more than that. Humanity's strength was not in weapons or numbers, but in the ability to adapt, to see differently, to act when others hesitated. The Queen had seen it too, and her surprise was clear. That night the palace was calm again, but the memory of the Guardian remained. For Ryan it was only the beginning. The Queen's interest in humanity had grown stronger, and now, the entire empire would begin to wonder what more these newcomers from Earth could bring. The crisis had passed, but the future had shifted. The palace returned to silence after the Guardian had sunk back into the depths of the citadel. Yet that silence carried weight. The envoys, once proud and confident, now walked carefully through the glowing halls. Their voices were quieter, their steps slower, as if the palace itself had reminded them of their limits. Captain Ryan Hale noticed the change but said little. He preferred silence. He had never been a man of many words, even before leaving Earth. But in silence he listened, and in listening, he often understood more than those who spoke the loudest. The human envoys gathered in their chambers after the crisis. Dr. Marcus Ellen, the ambassador, paced nervously. "Do you understand what just happened? The Queen herself saw you take command. She saw you give orders that saved the envoys of half the galaxy. This changes everything, Captain." Ryan shook his head. "I didn't take command. I only pointed out what was already there." "But no one else saw it," Ellen argued. "Not even the Queen's own guards?" "You did." Ryan said nothing more. He looked out the window instead. Beyond the palace walls, the city glowed under the moons. Airships drifted like lanterns through the sky. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful again. The next day, the Queen summoned all envoys to a private council. The chamber was smaller than the grand hall, but no less beautiful. The walls shimmered with flowing light, and a round table of crystal stood in the center. The Queen entered without fanfare, her silver robes gliding behind her. She sat at the head of the table and let her gaze sweep across the envoys. "Yesterday, the Guardians reminded us that strength is not the same as wisdom," she said. "We all saw how weapons failed where patience succeeded. It is time we speak not of power, but of ways." The envoys shifted uncomfortably. Many of them were used to boasting of armies and fleets. Few liked to admit weakness. But the Queen's voice left no room for argument. One envoy from the Dravak cleared his throat. "With respect, Majesty, humans are still young. Their survival may be luck, not wisdom." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Luck does not teach rhythm. Luck does not notice patterns when others do not. Humanity may be young, but youth is not weakness. Sometimes it is clarity." Her gaze moved across the table and stopped at Ryan. For the first time, she addressed him directly in front of all. "Tell us, soldier of Earth, how do your people endure? What is the human way?" The room grew quiet. All eyes turned to Ryan. He was not a speaker, nor had he ever planned to be. But the Queen had asked, and it would have been dishonor to remain silent. Ryan rose slowly. His uniform was simple, his voice steady.
"Humanity has no fleets like yours.
No towers of crystal, no weapons that can shake stars. What we have is something else." He paused, searching for words. He wanted them plain, honest. "We endure by adapting," he said. "On Earth we faced storms, hunger, and dangers larger than ourselves. We survived because we learned to change. If the mountain blocked our path, we climbed it. If the river flooded, we built boats. We do not always win the first time we fall, but we stand again." He glanced around the table. Some envoys listened with doubt, others with interest. The Queen listened most closely of all. Ryan continued. "We endure by working together. Alone, a human is weak, but together we share food, tools, and strength. A soldier may carry a shield, but it is the hand of his comrade that keeps him standing. We are not the strongest, but we are stubborn. We do not give up. That is the human way." The room was silent for a moment after he spoke. Then murmurs rose. Some envoys scoffed quietly. "Stubbornness is no power," one said. "Adaptation is only another word for weakness." But others looked thoughtful. The Queen raised her hand, silencing the whispers. Her eyes never left Ryan. "Your words are simple, but they hold truth. Too long have we thought strength meant dominance. Perhaps it also means endurance. Dr. Ellen leaned forward, sensing opportunity. Your Majesty, this is why humanity seeks alliance. Not because we are the strongest, but because we bring perspective others have forgotten. Where others see failure, we see another path. Where others see weakness, we see resilience. The Queen considered his words but said nothing. Instead, she rose from her seat. The council will pause. Return to your chambers. We will speak again. The envoys left in silence. Some glared at the humans, jealous of the Queen's attention. Others gave Ryan nods of respect. Later that night, Ryan walked alone in the palace gardens. The paths glowed softly beneath his boots, and strange flowers opened only under moonlight, filling the air with a sweet fragrance. He stopped by a fountain where streams of light rose and fell like water. He sensed movement and turned. The Queen stood nearby, her silver robe shining faintly under the moon. She walked slowly, her steps graceful, until she stood beside him. You spoke truth today, she said softly. Ryan bowed slightly. Only what I know. She studied him with her calm, sharp eyes. Most who stand in that chamber would have spoken of their fleets, their treasures, their power. You spoke of falling and standing again. Why? Ryan thought for a moment. Because it is the only way I understand. I'm a soldier. I've seen men fail and I've seen them rise. That is what makes us human. The Queen was silent for a long while. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled faintly. You have surprised me more than once, Captain Hale, and surprises are rare for one who has ruled as long as I. She turned her gaze to the stars above. Perhaps your people bring something the galaxy has forgotten. Not power, but a way. Ryan did not answer. He only stood beside her, looking at the same stars. The night deepened and the Queen returned to her palace chambers. Ryan remained in the garden for a while longer, listening to the soft sound of glowing streams. He did not know what the Queen would decide, but he felt that a door had opened. Humanity had shown not only its endurance but its heart. And though the envoys from older worlds did not yet see it, Ryan understood. Sometimes the simplest truths carried the greatest weight. The human way had been spoken, and the Queen was listening. The royal palace stood quiet under the light of dawn. The twin suns of the Scifi Empire slowly rose above the horizon, turning the crystal towers into pillars of fire and gold. Birds with silver wings flew in gentle patterns across the skies, their songs echoing through the courtyards. The city below glowed with life, preparing for another day. But inside the palace, the mood was heavy. The great council of envoys was to meet for the final time. Today, the Queen would announce her decision, who among the many races would earn her alliance, and whose voices would fade into silence. For centuries, such decisions had always gone to the oldest and strongest empires. Fleets, weapons, and riches usually decided who gained her favor. Humanity had no such wealth. They had come only with books, music, and words of peace. And yet, in these short days, something unexpected had happened. Captain Ryan Hale, dressed in his simple uniform. His fellow humans spoke nervously in the chamber behind him. Dr. Marcus Ellen polished his speech for the 10th time, muttering every line as if it would change the outcome. The scientists whispered to each other, debating if the Queen had truly been impressed or if they were only imagining hope where there was none. Ryan said nothing. He stood at the window again, watching the light climb higher in the sky. He remembered the trials, the Guardian, the Council. He remembered the Queen's quiet smile in the gardens. He did not know what she would decide, but he felt that something had shifted, not only for humanity but for the entire gathering. At last, the call came. The humans walked in silence through the glowing halls, joining the other envoys in the grand hall. The chamber was filled with light, the crystal walls shining like fire. Every envoy stood tall, their gifts displayed once more at the foot of the throne. Weapons that shimmered with deadly energy, jewels from stars long dead, machines that bent gravity and time. All of them glittered with power and pride. The humans' offerings looked plain in comparison. Books of paper, music carved into simple discs, paintings from Earth. Some envoys smirked quietly, certain the Queen would never choose such fragile things over treasures from across the galaxy. Then the Queen entered. Her steps were slow, graceful, each one carrying the weight of centuries. She seated herself upon the crystal throne, her silver eyes calm but filled with something deeper, something watching. Envoys of the stars, she began, her voice clear and strong, echoing through the chamber. You have come seeking alliance with the Seraphis Empire. You have shown your gifts, your words, your ways, and in these past days we have all been tested. Strength was shown, wisdom was tested, and truths were revealed. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. No one moved. For long centuries, alliances were decided by fleets and treasures, she continued. But strength alone is not the only measure of greatness. Yesterday I asked, what is the human way? Today I will answer with my choice. Her eyes swept across the chamber. One by one, envoys straightened, waiting for their name. The Drevak warrior stood proudly, his armor polished bright. The Tyrell scientist clutched his glowing device. Others whispered prayers to their ancestors, their hopes high. Then the Queen's eyes fell upon the humans. Among you, the people of Earth have shown me something rare, she said. They brought no great fleets, no jewels of dying stars. What they brought was a soldier who stood steady in silence, who saw order where others saw chaos, who spoke of falling and rising again. The hall was silent. Ryan felt every gaze turned toward him, but he remained still, his hands at his sides. The Queen rose from her throne. Her silver robes shimmered like water as she descended the steps. She walked across the hall past the gifts of power and wealth until she stood before the humans. Captain Ryan Hale, she said, her voice carrying like music. You said humanity's way is to endure, to adapt, to rise when fallen. This truth is greater than weapons. It is greater than jewels. It is the spirit that binds life itself. Then she turned to all the gathered envoys. Her voice grew stronger. Therefore I declare the Seraphis Empire shall form its first alliance not with the strongest or the oldest, but with humanity. With Earth, gasps filled the chamber. Some envoys cried out in disbelief. Others stared in silence, their pride wounded. A few, however, lowered their heads in respect, understanding the weight of her words. The Queen raised her hand, silencing the noise. This is the big surprise, she said, that the youngest race among you has shown the oldest truth. That greatness is not only in power, but in spirit. She turned once more to Ryan. Soldier of Earth, know this. Today you have changed the path of your people. Your quiet strength has surprised a queen who thought she could no longer be surprised. Ryan bowed deeply. Your Majesty, I am only a soldier. I did what anyone could have done. The Queen's smile was faint but real. Perhaps. But you did it when others did not. That is enough. The ceremony ended with a new mark carved into the history of the galaxy. Humanity, once ignored and underestimated, now stood beside one of the greatest empires, not because of power, but because of the human spirit. That evening, the humans gathered in their chambers, stunned by what had happened. Dr. Ellen laughed with disbelief. Do you understand what this means? We are no longer on the edge of the galaxy. We are part of it now. You, Captain Hale, you made this possible. Ryan shook his head, a small smile on his face. It wasn't me. It was humanity. I only showed what we are. Outside, the city glowed brighter than ever, its towers shining under the twin suns. The people celebrated with songs that filled the air like wind chimes. The Queen watched from her balcony, her eyes on the stars. She had chosen the humans, not because of their weapons, not because of their riches, but because of something far rarer. A spark she had thought lost to time, a reminder that the galaxy was not finished growing. And far below, among the lights of the city, Ryan stood quietly, his gaze on the same stars. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a soldier doing his duty. But deep inside, he knew the truth. Humanity's journey had only begun, and the big surprise was that even the mightiest of queens could be moved by the simple, stubborn spirit of Earth. The future was waiting, and humanity was ready to meet it.